My background is I was the executive director, the first staff person for Save Our Shores from 1986 to 1993. In
Dan,
that role,
Dan, excuse me, Dan, can you introduce yourself, your name first, and then
oh, sure,
thank you.
sure. Dan Heathley, and I'm retired. So I was the first staff person for Save Our Shores, based in Santa Cruz from 1986 to 1993, where we uh, were involved in the fight against offshore oil, including the passage of 26 local ordinances aimed at onshore facilities for offshore oil, which survived. 13 of those cities and counties survived a lawsuit, and also in establishment of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and also getting the large boundary for the sanctuary so that offshore oil was prohibited north of Santa Cruz and south of the Golden Gate. I ran an organization called O'Neill Sea Odyssey, which was an ocean education program on a catamaran out of the Santa Cruz Harbor. It was a free program. It was a science program for fourth through sixth grade youth. That program has served around 140,000 students since it was founded by Jack O'Neill back in the late 90s. And I was there for 20 years. Since then, I've been involved in the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and I'm also involved in other efforts with Save Our Shores and others around issues of ocean protection. I'm also raising money for exhibits at the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Exploration Center in Santa Cruz. Our goal is to raise $1 million over 2 years to refresh the visitor experience and exhibits that are there. So I'm involved in that as well.
Dan, what do you think some of the most pressing issues that we're dealing with today concerning the oceans here in California and abroad around, well, mainly in the US at this point and abroad?
Well, I'd say there's a couple of levels to that. California has been a leader in ocean protection, and there's an overarching agency called the Ocean Protection Council, which is run by the Natural Resources Secretary in California, who works for the governor. And the big issues are plastic pollution, um, nitrite runoff pollution. Climate change is a terribly large threat to the ocean. The ocean absorbs excess carbon, but as it does so, the pH heads towards a less basic, more acidic stance as a result. The other issues facing the ocean are overfishing in many cases, and the effects generally of overuse and exploitation. There are a lot of people on the planet, and they really tax the ocean in a major way. So California is active in the effort. The federal government operates something called national marine sanctuaries and marine national monuments. We will see what the future of those are under the new administration, which intends to shrink the size of government, including the agency that runs national marine sanctuaries. But I'm heartened by the fact that the nominated head of NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is a friend to sanctuaries. So that's good. We'll see how that works. Internationally, the UN has been embarking on an effort to get a high seas treaty approved. So far, 17 of the needed ratifications have been done by nations around the world, including Spain and France and various islands and various other countries around the world. 60 nations need to ratify. Over 100 nations have signed the treaty, but 60 need to ratify. So those signatures need to be ratified by the governmental body. If it's in the US, for example, it's the US Senate. And that probably won't happen in the next 4 years in the United States, but it's happening in other parts of the world. The high seas are basically all of the ocean area that is not governed by any nation. So that's about well over 2/3 of the ocean itself are known as the high seas, and this treaty would allow for creating protected areas, and also has a methodology by which, if there is any economic activity in the ocean, there'd have to be consultations with folks, including indigenous tribes that were involved in that part of the ocean. And the High Seas Treaty, I think, would go a long way to protecting a very large swath of the ocean. So you've got state, federal, and international efforts underway. It may not be enough, but the ocean is 71% of our planet in terms of its surface area. It's the largest, um, basically, large feature on the planet, contains most of our biodiversity, supplies food, it controls weather, creates weather, absorbs excess carbon, as I mentioned before, is an economic highway for most of the products we use, come via ship over the ocean. So we have to take good care of the ocean. And to do that, we need to have governmental systems in place and also behavioral changes. For example, I mentioned plastic pollution. Plastic pollution occurs partly because consumers are given little choice, but also people choose to use plastic products. And oftentimes, those products wind up in the ocean.
One of the things, Dan, about plastics is most of us don't understand the ramifications of plastic. There was a study shown that breast milk from women in Alaska showed up in the kids' milk
Yeah,
from their eating fish.
yeah, that's right. So what happens is most plastic is lightweight. It's not put in the recycle bin. It's not put in the trash can. It winds up going into what we call the non-point source pollution cycle. In other words, it gets carried by water or by wind. Single-use plastic bags are a good example of this. And they wind up in streams and rivers and ultimately in the ocean. Once it gets in the ocean, it's broken down to its synthetic component parts by wind, by waves, and by sunlight. And when it's broken down, it does not break down into its natural components. It breaks down into its basic synthetic components and then is ingested as food. And there are trillions of pieces of plastic in the ocean today, tons and tons of plastic that are being ingested by wildlife. This will get bioaccumulated up the food web and causes great damage. Also, there have been studies done, and I've seen these studies where plastic has been found in the soil. It's been found in the air and in the atmosphere. It's been found in lakes and streams. It's been found in human bodies. So plastic is eventually going to take over a large part of our environment, and be a large part of our human bodies as well as the organisms that also inhabit this planet.
What are some of the things that we need to look out for and we need to understand the effects of plastic on our lives? What are some of the problems that we have
Well, some of the
as a
problems with
result of that?
Yeah, so plastic is not a recyclable product, and people have been working on different forms of plastic that are, if there's a synthetic material, it's less harmful to the environment. The problem with that, it still gets ingested when it's broken down into its smaller parts, and there's no nutritional value to it. And this affects the food web as well. So plastic essentially is a single-use throwaway item. So you use it once and it's gone. So you have to produce a lot of plastic, which is petroleum based. And this adds to climate change. It adds to a lot of other pollution problems that we have. And then the end product is also tossed away after one use. In the old days, before the use of plastic, we would have products that we would use over and over and over again, like reusable grocery bags or carry products, that we could bring our groceries home in, and we would reuse things several times, and now we have more of a throwaway society. So all this stuff winds up somewhere. It'll wind up in our ocean, in our landfills, or just out in the environment. And if it's made with harmful chemicals, that's not good for the environment. It's not good for habitats. It's not good for individual organisms, including humans.
Well, one of the things about our dream is to do everything that we can possible through media, social marketing, a variety of ways of getting the word out to highlight what people can do and how we can change this dynamic that's taking place that's affecting so many lives. We have a lot of different elements that we have that we haven't seen in the past. Autism, schizophrenia, bipolar, on and on and on. We can name it, cancer, just various issues that we are dealing with based on some of the issues related to our environment.
Yeah, that's true. And the more that people get on board, the problem is, for example, Big Soda spent over $1 million in the city of Santa Cruz to defeat a potential soda tax or sugary drinks tax. And the measure actually was approved because of the grassroots campaign waged in favor of it. But there are a lot of resources at the disposal of those who produce plastic and those who use it. For example, big soda or the petroleum industry, which benefits. So there's a very, very big hill to climb or big mountain to climb to get there. But it's been shown time and time again that once people have the facts, they can make the correct decisions and do things that'll protect their future and their survival rate. So that's very heartening to hear that that's something that you and your colleagues are contemplating.
One of the things that I've heard is there's a group that's interested in putting windmills off the coast of the state. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, there's that's actually pretty far down the road. So leases have been sold by the federal government. So BOEM, the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, which also deals with offshore oil development, sold leases off of Humboldt County and sold leases off of northern San Luis Obispo and southern Monterey County, the latter of which is a 400 square mile area. And there were three companies that purchased those leases. One of the companies just stated that they will not participate in the scoping process for the placement of cables to bring the electricity on shore from this area. But I'm very familiar with this because I was on the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council, and I voted against, as did the rest of the council, in allowing offshore wind in a marine sanctuary in Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. So they being BOEM and the California Energy Commission, put the lease area outside of Monterey Bay Sanctuary because it extends south to Cambria, which is south of Big Sur. So those leases have been sold, and I was involved with the creation of Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. I worked with a very large group of people on that, and the size of that proposed sanctuary shrunk over time to accommodate cables to bring electrons from those offshore wind platforms to first they were going to bring it to Morro Bay where there had been an electric power plant, and they have a large transmission grid there to bring all the, excuse me, I have to head to another room here to bring the electricity onto shore. The second thing that happened is they actually moved that to Diablo Canyon because they had a larger transmission structure there. So offshore wind is a big deal. The new administration, President Trump, has stated that he does not want offshore wind. I don't know how that's going to work because the leases have been sold to these companies, but he may be making it very difficult for them um, to proceed with those leases because once you purchase a lease for an offshore wind area, then you have to do environmental reports, you have to do mitigations, and then you erect the offshore platforms, and then you have to place the cables and the substations to help bring that electricity onto shore. So once that happens, you've spent probably several $billions between Humboldt and the what's called the Morro Bay area off California. So it's going to be interesting to see if these companies are able to navigate a new federal system for this. Um, Again, as I say, these companies have purchased the leases, but it's up to the federal government to begin the various lease steps. So once you have the lease, you have to get approval for the areas where you want to erect the platforms. You have to do environmental studies. The federal government is deeply involved in all this. Whether Trump will allow them to do that now will remain to be seen.
One thing that I'd like to talk about is there's so much beauty along the coastal regions, and we enjoy these beautiful beaches. We have so many different ways and methods of keeping our beaches clean, allowing structures to be platforms to be put in place to make sure the beaches are accessible to people during the summertime. People can enjoy. A lot of times we don't understand what it takes to keep that alive. And exactly what we're talking about today, some of those ideas and concepts that are at play are the very things that the larger community, if they could digest that and see the importance of it. And we talked about health before. You know, there are many elements of what the ocean provides for us health-wise that will create more concerned constituents over looking at what we can do to make the oceans much more pliable to our living.
Okay, so I think the question that you're asking there is what do we do to keep the ocean clean, the beaches clean, and also contribute to our health? Is that correct?
Well, I was admonishing the things that are being done, like Save Our Shores, like the National Marine Sanctuaries. Those are tools that have been used to help keep those things alive.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for all of your service that you've done and the various organizations out there, and just how can individuals, the community, get more involved in making this even a greater reality?
Well, there's many ways that public can get involved. They can volunteer, they can contribute, and they can vote and advocate. So the first is volunteer. So, for example, Save Our Shores has beach cleanups that they undertake all around Monterey Bay, for example. There's a coastal cleanup day every year in September, but also year round. There are organizations that host coastal cleanups, and this not only keeps the beaches clean, but it prevents plastic pollution, nutrient-rich pollution, and other contaminants out of the ocean, which is a good thing. And this requires 3 or 4 hours and a little bit of effort on behalf of individuals and families and couples who want to participate. The second is contributing. So in the Monterey Bay region, you have Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, which is undertaking the campaign I mentioned to raise funds for the Sanctuary Exploration Center exhibits. We want to raise $1 million over the next 2 years. So you can go to montereybayfoundation.org to help contribute to a healthier Monterey Bay Sanctuary. And you can also volunteer as well. There are other organizations like Save Our Shores, O'Neill Sea Odyssey, Watsonville Wetlands Watch, Monterey Waterkeeper. All of these organizations contribute to a healthy environment, a healthy ocean, and that's vitally important, as you point out. The last is voting and advocating. So when you vote, make sure you know where candidates stand on a clean environment and a clean ocean. Make sure that once people are elected to office, whether or not they're the candidates who stood for clean water or clean ocean, make sure they hear from you. For example, right now, some very large budget cuts have been proposed for the federal government, including those at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which runs marine sanctuaries. So contact your member of Congress, contact your U.S. senators, let them know how you feel, and their job is to stand up for what the people want in terms of a clean ocean and clean environment. So that's the third thing that people can do to engage themselves in a better ocean and better environment.
Dan, I know that you've been working on this for a long time, and I got involved in the ocean when I took classes back in '97 at the Monterey CSUMB, Cal State Monterey Bay. And one
Yeah.
of the things that excites me right now is understanding and learning things about the ocean, the health benefits of the ocean that a lot of people are unaware of. We were just walking down by in Aptos yesterday, and my wife wanted to take her shoes off because she wanted to
Yeah.
touch the sand, because she said the sand has health properties to them, and she just wanted to get some water on her feet. So you are very familiar with a lot of the health benefits, which could transmit to the general public to understand the value of why we need to keep the oceans clean.
Yeah, there's a late colleague of mine named Jay Nichols, Wallace J. Nichols, and he was a turtle biologist. But he began to notice throughout his work, about 10 years younger than I am, he began to notice throughout his work that people who were on, near, or in the water felt better, had health benefits, were more relaxed, were more productive. Um, and so he asked colleagues of his who are in the various fields to compile studies so that they could make the case that ocean protection led to better ocean health, in particular mental health. And nobody was willing to take on that project, so he did it himself. And he created a book called Blue Mind, which I'd recommend everybody read. So there are mental health benefits to the ocean that you get by being on or near or in the water. And it's not just the ocean, also freshwater sources as well. The health benefits of the ocean itself are well known. The ocean provides half of the oxygen that we breathe, mostly from phytoplankton, which is the bottom of the food web. Also, the benefits of exercising in the ocean are well known, of swimming or being in any body of water. Um, and the ocean itself provides a lot of benefits for our communities and for people. For example, kelp forests, which are very prominent in the Monterey Bay area. These are just offshore. Kelp is an algae that grows a foot a day, bull kelp, giant kelp, various types of kelp. Kelp absorbs a lot of excess carbon from the atmosphere. It also provides the primary habitat for sea otters, California sea otters, who thereby manage what's known as a kelp forest habitat, which includes fish and crabs and sea stars and and fish, many other types of species. And if you notice, kelp does buffer wave action, especially during large storms. It gets torn up a lot and suffers some damage as a result of this, sacrificing itself, but it really helps to buffer the effects of climate change and the effects of storms. So that's another health benefit to human beings and to our communities. For example, and the ocean itself, has a lot of healing properties. If you speak to anybody who has any knowledge or roots in indigenous communities around the ocean, including California, they will tell you extensively about the healing properties. Food, seafood, of course, comes from the ocean and depends on a healthy ocean, and thereby assists with human health. So there are medicines that are created from sea-born creatures. And you can Google it. There's an extensive library of how this works. The ocean is really the largest feature on our planet. Thereby, it is the largest tool in the toolkit that we have to defend, to protect our health in terms of the natural world. And ultimately, everything does stem from the natural world, and the ocean is two-thirds of that.
I'm so glad that you're able to expound on that, because so many of us, we don't have a clue of the importance of the ocean, and we go
Yeah.
by it, we see it, we enjoy it, but we are totally not clued in to the value and the importance of it. And if we didn't have the ocean there, as you said, it purifies the air. It does so many other things that are related to our longevity of life.
It really does. The ocean is our major partner in health. On the other hand, we are abusing the ocean quite a bit through climate change, through pollution, through overfishing. And by doing this, we're reducing its resilience in a major way. And when we do that, we reduce its ability to heal us. A good example is the human body. The human body has natural healing mechanisms. So if you get a cold and you just take care of yourself for a few days, chances are you'll recover. But if you have other infections and other problems in your body, it makes it more difficult to do that. The same is true with the ocean. And like Sylvia Earle once famously said, the ocean is the lungs of our planet because it produces over half of our oxygen. And if we do major damage to that, it'll have an impact on the rest of us.
Yes. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the importance of the ocean. And I would like for you to state again what you do and how people can get involved and help with the sanctuary facility. Now, one other thing I'd like to ask you before you're off. I know that is this the only sanctuary display facility here in Santa Cruz? Are there many other ones along the coastal regions?
Well, there are many museums and places like the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History, the Seymour Center over on the west side. You have facilities in Monterey, the Monterey Bay Aquarium being the most prominent, the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History, for example. They all have exhibits. The Sanctuary Exploration Center across the street from the wharf in Santa Cruz is the only one that's very specific to the sanctuary and talks about the role that the sanctuary plays. So this fundraising campaign for the exhibits of that exploration center is terribly important. And you can get involved by going to montereybayfoundation.org. And also you can assist other organizations with their ocean protection work, Save Our Shores at saveourshores.org, Watsonville Wetlands Watch, .org, Elkhorn Slough Foundation is another one. O'Neill Sea Odyssey, which provides education, Monterey Waterkeeper, Big Sur Land Trust. These are all involved in ocean protection in some way or another. The Coastal Watershed Council in Santa Cruz. You can just look up the host of organizations and anything you can do to support what they're doing, to give money, to volunteer your time, to advocate on behalf of them, all rolls up to this need that we have to take care of our ocean, the watersheds that flow to it, and to our planet.
Dan, thank you so much for coming on today on Dan, thank you for coming on today on the Oceanic Cities and giving us some valuable information on how we can get involved with taking care of the ocean and building those various important tools that we need to help to keep the ocean alive. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you, Franklin. I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.